I'm the managing partner of the Mulcahy Law Firm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I will be your instructor here today. I have enjoyed representing as their legal counsel HOAs and condominiums in Arizona for over 25 years. I can't believe it's been that long, but it has. And my firm currently represents over 1,000 planned communities and condominium associations throughout the state of Arizona. I also serve on my HOA board, and I have for many years. So I think I kind of bring an interesting perspective to these classes. And don't fret if you are a board member. Of course, I work with board members all the time and property managers as I'm advising them about running their associations. But I also had a little stint as a disgruntled owner in association that I live in. I was on our board for a number of years, and then I was off our board for about 10 years. And during that time, I was unhappy with how things were running. So if you're here as a homeowner today and you're not happy with how things are running in your association, I really do understand that perspective too. So let's just get started. We have a great class for you today. But before we do that, we are going to ask you a question. So we're going to be launching a poll here to find out who our audience is today. And so our poll question number 1 is, let us know your current role. Are you a board member? Are you a manager? Are you a homeowner, interested homeowner in the community, or are you other? And we're going to let those poll results come in. And while we're doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going to be on our agenda here today. Is what are the responsibilities to serve on your association's board of directors? And this is important whether you're a new board member, whether you're a seasoned board member. We want to give you the tools so that you're aware of what your responsibilities are and your fiduciary duties to the association. And also we want to give you some things that, tips on things that can get you into trouble and mistakes that boards make. And so we'll be talking about what the requirements are under Arizona law, some case law requirements, and just giving you a really great overview of the things that you need to know if you're serving on your board. If you're a manager and you're listening in on this presentation today, this is going to have some great tools for you to share with your boards, especially if they're kind of not on the right track and maybe not doing things the way they should be. And lastly, if you're a homeowner who's unhappy with how things are going on your board, we're going to be giving you advice on what your board should be doing, and hopefully you can share it with them so that they can alter their course and start following the law. Okay, let's get back and talk a little bit about the answers to our poll. So we have a really great turnout here today. We have 58% of you are board members, 9% are managers, and 33% are interested homeowners. So thanks so much, everybody, for being here today. We really appreciate that. And we're going to get right into our presentation. I want to start out by talking about leadership and the importance when you're serving on your board of being a good leader in your community and listening to people who live in your association and caring about them and their concern. It's really important that when you're elected to your board, sometimes you get elected because you're upset about something. I mean, I think that's kind of how I got on my board. I wasn't real happy about how things were going the second time. The first time I just kind of fell into it, honestly. But the second time I had more of an agenda, for sure. I wanted to clean things up and get us fiscally sound and correct some pretty serious problems that our association was facing. So lots of times you get on the board with an agenda, but you don't really think about the fact that, hey, I'm, a leader in the community, and I need to listen to our owners, and I need to, when I'm out walking my dog, I'm not just enjoying the beautiful mountain view tops and the beautiful day. I'm also kind of looking for problems like, is the irrigation system leaking, or is there an event that's broken, or is there a fire hazard? And so it takes a little bit of the enjoyment out of being in your property, honestly, when you're on the board, because it's kind of like you're always on duty, right? And sometimes that means that when you're out walking your dog or you're on a nice walk or a run, neighbors are going to stop you and they're going to say, I'm really upset about this, and why aren't you doing anything about it? And you have to just understand when you're serving on your board, that's part of the job, and you have to be nice and you need to listen. And so these are just kind of like some soft skills that you need to be thinking about if you are serving on your board. It's not just the hard skills that I'm going to be talking about here, like complying with the law, complying with your documents. There are also soft skills that you have to master and accept that they are your responsibility if you're serving on your board. And so some of those is that you're kind of always on duty, even though you're at home off duty, right? And you do kind of have a responsibility to be looking for things that come up or that land in your lap regarding your association, and then providing them to your management company or your landscaper or whatever. That's part of your job. And I personally enjoy it because I want things to be nice in our association. And I take a great sense of pride when I'm out walking Bailey, our dog. I look around our community and I feel good about a lot of the changes that I've been a part of as serving on our board. But with that comes also some negativity, because sometimes you're going to get owners that are upset about stuff or think you could have done things better, and you just have to listen and be nice. And you may disagree with their opinion and you may disagree with what they want you to do, but you still have to listen. That's part of your job as being a volunteer board member. I know they're not getting paid, but that is part of your job, and it's important that you're caring and nice. You don't have to give them a ton of time, but you have to just be reasonable and nice. And it could be that, hey, I'm on my way to work. I'm sorry, I can't talk about this right now. Why don't you come to the next board meeting, or call me at a more convenient time and we can talk more about this. Okay, let's talk about, those are soft skills. Now let's talk about the hard skills that you need as a board member and the requirements that you have. So let's start out by saying that being on the board is a completely thankless job. Okay, so if you're a homeowner that's listening in here today, and you're really mad at your board, try to see it a little bit from their perspective. The board's not getting paid to run the affairs of your association. It literally at times has been a 15, 20, 30 hour a week job for me when we've had serious problems, in addition to my other jobs, right? Being a mom, running a law firm, trying to keep my household running. Other times it may only be like 5 hours a week or 10 hours a week, but it's a huge commitment to serve on your board. So try to cut your board a little slack from time to time. If you're a homeowner, understand that, this is a volunteer position. And if you are thinking about serving on your board, recognize that it's definitely a time commitment. So let's talk a little bit about, what are some hard skill requirements? So number one, it's a business. Serving on your board entitles you to run a business. And so, we have to stay within our budget and we have to collect assessments so that we can pay our bills. It's basically running a business just like it would be running any other kind of business in the United States. So we have to answer to our constituents, right, who are our customers, basically. We have to make ends meet. We have to collect, money so that we have income, and we have to pay our bills on time. We also have the added requirement that we need to follow our documents. So the Ccnrs, the covenants, conditions, and restrictions, the bylaws, the articles, and the rules. So you have to be familiar with those documents. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, some tips on how you can, if you're a new board member or you're a current board member, how you can get up to speed on those documents and be aware of what's in them. You also have to be aware of all these Arizona laws and some federal laws that apply to associations. And honestly, it's kind of a burden because every year our legislature is changing the laws in Arizona. And every year there's new case law that's being decided that we are expected to be aware of. So it's awesome that we have these classes that can better provide free information to all players in our industry, owners, board members, and managers, so that there's a free resource so you can be aware of what the requirements are. Last but not least, we really need to conduct our skills when we're serving as board members in a professional and business-like manner. And we need to follow the documents. There's nothing worse than a board member who, has violations all over their property. And so, we're even held to like basically a higher standard as a board member because we're an example for the community. And just an example of being businesslike and professional, if somebody comes to a board meeting, an owner, and maybe they are, not as polite as you would like them to be, the board has to still be polite back, because, this is a business and we need to be professional and treat people in a nice manner in all of our interactions with them. And sometimes that's really hard when you have someone who comes to the meeting and is irrational and mean and, really critical of the job you're doing. So just keep that in mind. Those are some things that you need to be aware of. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what's the 411 on what you need to know if you're serving on your board. So there are a number of responsibilities. I'm going to give you just the most important ones that you need to walk away from this seminar here today. Knowing. So number one, you got to participate. If you're on your board, you have to come to board meetings. You need to be informed about association issues. You need to participate, really. I mean, it's basically coming to board meetings, chipping in and helping on different issues that may come up in your association from time to time. Like if you're looking for a new landscaper, maybe you need to, outside of a board meeting, maybe you need to, contact landscaping companies to get them to submit a proposal. You need to look at that board packet that's sent out before your board meeting. You don't need to spend 2 hours on it, but we have a board meeting at my association every month. Usually we get the board packet a day or two before the board meeting, and I literally open the packet, do a quick spin through it, 15 minutes, so that I can walk into the meeting, the board meeting, and be ready to discuss and vote on issues. And I'm not, just opening the seal on the envelope, for the first time when I walk into that meeting and making the meeting longer because I don't know what's going on. So you got to participate. If you volunteer to be on the board, this is an active role. You are going to need to be looking for issues that might affect the association, reporting them to the right party. That's part of your job. Okay, another thing that's important if you're serving on your board is you need to read, understand, and be in compliance with your association's documents. And it's not just on your lot or unit, it's regarding all aspects of running the association. So if you are a board member right now, what I would recommend to you is spend a maximum of 15 minutes a year just doing a quick spin through your documents. And so every board member should either have access online to your association's documents, or you should have a binder with a hard copy of the documents, which is going to be like Ccnrs, bylaws, rules, articles of incorporation, architectural guidelines, landscaping guidelines if you have them. Just do a quick spin of them. Just look through the pages. Okay, here's the deal on the Ccnrs, right? Probably the most important document for you to be looking at. That's going to be the use restrictions for your association. Just kind of see how they're set up. It's usually the definitions are at the beginning. That defines, what's the common area, what might be the owner's responsibilities. Then we go into the use restrictions, and the requirements to pay assessments, the requirements that the board needs to collect assessments. And if owners don't pay their assessments, we can foreclose or get a personal judgment. What are the insurance requirements? What can owners do on their property? What can't they do? How must things be maintained? Just do a quick spin of the documents. You don't have to do a deep dive. This is just flipping through pages. Okay, I understand. These are the Ccnrs. This is where I need to look if I need to find the insurance section. That's going to be in the Ccnrs. And look at the bylaws. Bylaws is the how to run your association board. So how many board members? When's your annual meeting? What are some of the rights and responsibilities of the board? Can you take out a loan if you need one? Those are generally the things in the bylaws. The rules are going to be the next really important document. What people can and can't do on the common areas, owners and their guests. So just kind of do a quick spin through the documents and know the general lay of the land. so that when questions come up, like, oh, can someone have a shed in their backyard? You know, okay, boom, that's a CCNR question. We pop out the CCNRs and look at the use restrictions on the land. So knowing that you are responsible for complying with your documents and having a general knowledge of what's in each document. Okay, the next one's a really big thing of board member responsibility. It'd be adhering to your fiduciary duty to the association. So if you're going to remember anything from this presentation today, this is what I need you to remember. There are 3 duties as a board member that you need to follow, or you're breaching your obligations or your responsibilities to the association. So real quickly, what they are, you have a duty of care. We'll talk about that in a second. A duty of confidentiality, and a duty to avoid conflicts of interest or self-dealing. So duty of care, duty of confidentiality, and duty to avoid conflicts of interest or self-dealing. So what does duty of care mean? That means just doing what you're supposed to do, right? Showing up for board meetings, knowing what the documents say, enforcing them, collecting money, in terms of assessments from the owners, pursuing owners legally if they're not paying assessments so that you have enough money to pay your bills. Overseeing your vendors, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing to manage your association or handle your landscaping for the association. So just taking care in your responsibility as a board member, researching things that need to be researched, making informed decisions. These are all examples of having a duty of care for the association. The next 2 are kind of smaller issues, but they're important as well. So duty of confidentiality. I always say that when you serve on your board, you get the juicy scoop on basically everything going on in your association, whether you want it or you don't. It comes right in front of you, and you hear a lot of confidential things. A good rule of thumb would be, if you hear about something or discuss something during an executive session, you cannot talk about that with anybody other than the board members and the manager. If the manager is part of that discussion in the executive session, or there's a special guest like myself as legal counsel for the association. So items that you hear about in executive session, there's a duty of confidentiality, and you cannot discuss that with your spouse, your friends in the neighborhood, any third parties. It's in the vault, so to speak. There may be things that you find out about that are not discussed during the executive session, like, there's all kinds of crazy things that happen. We had something yesterday for my association that came up that was a very embarrassing situation for an owner. Where I live, we've had situations where there's been domestic issues and police are called, and the association's board is made aware of it. Have good judgment. Keep things that are confidential. Don't spread rumors, don't gossip. Just treat this like a business. So duty of confidentiality is, you're going to hear the juicy scoop. Don't spread the juicy scoop around to anybody or discuss other than 2 board members. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the duty to avoid self-dealing or conflict of interest. If you're serving on your board, you shouldn't be profiting from being a board member. Your family members should not be profiting from you being a board member, and your friends should not be profiting. So you shouldn't be, hiring your friend's landscaping company or hiring your son to be the handyman at the association. Those are potentially conflicts of interest, and it could be considered that you're personally benefiting from serving as a volunteer board member, and you need to avoid that at all costs. So very important refreshers. When you're serving on your board, you have a fiduciary duty of care, duty of confidentiality, and a duty to avoid self-dealing or conflicts of interest. Okay, another thing that we want to talk about briefly here that goes hand in hand with fiduciary duty is making sure that you're putting your interests aside for what's better for the association. So a really good example of this would be, let's say that you got on the board to get a playground installed, in a common area because you have kids and you wish that we had a playground at the association. And that was kind of your MO on how you got on the board. You told everybody, I'm going to try to get a playground. Well, ultimately, the board votes it down, and they don't want a playground. And so one thing that you want to remember is being on a board, majority rule. And so even though it's in my best interest, I want the playground. It doesn't mean that, I have to get over it because I've just been outvoted, right? And so even though I personally want that, it's not going to happen this year. It doesn't mean that I can't ask again in the future when the composition of the board changes. But it's not appropriate for board members when they lose on issues, so to speak, when they're outvoted to, go nuclear and start bad mouthing the board or, canvassing the association with poison pen letters or, showing up at the front entrance of the association with a sign saying the board hates kids or something like that. You can't do that. You're going to get outvoted and you have to be an adult and you have to recognize, okay, that's not happening this year. Majority rules, that's how associations work. It doesn't mean you can't revisit the issue in the future, but you have to be professional and businesslike and put your interests of the association above your own interests. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is overseeing the association and services as a business. So when you're serving on your board, you really need to be using licensed and bonded contractors for any association work that's being done. So landscaping, handyman, any construction, repairing the roof, painting, treat it like a business. You shouldn't be using unlicensed, unbonded contractors because if there's a problem, there's nowhere to go, right? At least if you're using licensed, bonded, and insured contractors, you will have a right to, make an insurance claim or contact the register of contractors or the regulatory agencies. And so treat it like a business, right? And then oversee your vendors. So if you have a management company, make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that may be returning phone calls in a timely manner, getting notices out for your regular board meetings. You're required to give notice 48 hours in advance of every regular board meeting. Making sure that they're doing that, making sure that the management company is overseeing vendors, other vendors. Maybe they are required to handle overseeing the landscaping company. So, I'm not saying that you have to get, in the nitty gritty when you're serving on the board, but you have to oversee things. So the board meeting is a great time to get updates from everybody who's working for the board in terms of what they're doing. And it's okay. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I serve on my board and, I'm not in the nitty gritty of making sure that the landscaper trimmed the tree. I ask the manager to, follow up on things, and I expect the manager to just handle it and then report back to us when it's handled. A really great tip if you have a management company or a manager and you're struggling with the fact that maybe they're not communicating well with you or maybe they're not getting things done. A really great tip that I can pass along to you would be, as a board, have an expectation and communicate that expectation to the manager that, hey, we want a weekly report from you. Every Friday, we would like you to send us an email before the close of the business day and let us know what you worked on this week, what your game plan is for next week, if there's any problems that you need direction on. Just having a good communication system with the manager and holding them accountable. So that, let's say if you said at the August board meeting, we want you to get 3 bids to resurface the tennis courts. In that weekly communication that the manager gives you, they should say, okay, I've pinpointed 5 vendors to ask for a bid. And I've, put a telephone call in or emailed 3 of the vendors and I'm waiting to hear a response. Just so you know that they're working on it throughout the month, because most boards meet monthly. What we sometimes see is management companies give their managers too many properties, and the managers don't have time to work on all these things that they've been given to do at the board meeting. And so what they do is they go to the board meeting in August, right? And then they unfortunately may not have time to do everything that they need to do for the next 3 weeks. So they just kind of put your association on hold, don't do anything. And then that last few days before the meeting, it's like rush, 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 rush. I've got to get 5 bids. I've got to get, got to get the lawyer to give us an opinion. And, that is not the way things should be done. Really, the way things should be done is right after the meeting, they come up with a list, a to-do list, and then they just start knocking it off each week. And if you get that to-do list every Friday, you'll know what they're working on and that they're just knocking it off, and you'll be able to see and hold them accountable for getting things done. Because the biggest complaint that we hear from board members is that the management companies or the managers, they don't get all the work done that they need to. And, that's a really good way to hold them accountable. Okay, so overseeing and, managing the different vendors that you have for your association is one of your responsibilities when you're serving on the board. The next thing is following and enforcing the documents of the association. We already talked about doing the 15-minute quick spin through them every year when you're serving on your board. When you probably should have a method in place in your association as to how violations are going to be handled. Maybe the board has hired the management company to do inspections once a month on all the properties, and then they give you an inspection report. Maybe your association doesn't have the capability to do that, and maybe you just are complaint-based only inspections. So if another owner complains about it, you go out and investigate it. But just knowing what your documents state and then having a plan to correct any problems that may arise as part of use restrictions or land, violation type things that owners may have is really effective and important so that you maintain what those restrictions state. Making sure that you are, getting a budget into place every year for your association so that you're fiscally responsible. Right now is budget season for associations, so you should be planning your budget for the 2023 fiscal year. You should be thinking about how is inflation going to affect our budget this year. Many associations are having their vendors contact them, and they're adding surcharges for gasoline increases and inability to find quality employees, and so they're having to pay a higher hourly rate to find and attract good employees. And so you really need to be thinking about that budgeting process every year, but especially this year. And many associations are going to need to have an increase in their assessment rate in 2023 to meet those additional expenses. Maybe you're going to have a special assessment. Maybe you need to have a new reserve study done for your association because our economy is shifting and things are costing more. And maybe this year is a good year to get that updated to make sure that we are adequately reserve funding for the future. So really thinking about your budget, planning it, thinking about inflation, thinking about maybe getting a new reserve study to keep up with the times, so to speak. These are all really important financial responsibilities of your board. Also, you want to make sure that you have the proper insurance for your association. You have a relationship with your insurance agent. Nothing worse than you have a major claim at your association and you contact your agent and they 1-800 you, right? They say, oh, sorry, I call the main number. Here's the 1-800 number. And then you sit on hold and it takes forever. You want to get to know your insurance agent, just like you want to get to know your attorney or your reserve company who handles your reserve study, or your landscaping company, the CEO or one of the key managers. You want to have a relationship with these key partners so that when there's a problem, they know you. You got the hotline right to them, the red phone right to them, and they are helping you solve the problem. So establishing relationships with them and working effectively with them is a really important skill for serving on your board. Let's see. Remember that as you're handling violations and as you're handling assessment collection in associations, having a policy in place so that you uniformly treat everybody the same is just a really great idea. Your board can adopt a policy. Our firm has some sample policies if anybody wants one. We also have a sample budget. We have all kinds of great cheat sheets on our webpage for our association or for our firm at mulcahylawfirm.com. For those of you who may be familiar with us, we've got these cheat sheets, and we've got a great one on budgeting and collecting delinquent assessments and enforcing your Ccnrs when you have violations. But basically just coming up with a plan for how you're going to handle violations, how you're going to handle delinquent owners, and then following through on it or delegating it to your management company to follow that plan, or your attorney. Really important skills for your association's board to have in place so that things are seamless. Let's see, knowing about a couple important parts of the law in Arizona, that you just need to be aware of as a board member. So one of those things is owners have a right to inspect the records of the association. That is a fundamental right that they have. It's outlined in the Condominium Act and the Planned Communities Act. So if you have an owner that is making a records request, they're probably disgruntled about something, right? A really good opportunity to pick up the phone, have the manager or your lawyer or maybe a board member pick up the phone and ask them, how something's bothering you. Obviously, if you're making a records request, how can we best answer your question? Typically when we get a records request, it's a really big one. Like, we want to see all bank statements for the past 20 years and all meeting minutes for the past 15 years of the association. And we want to see all correspondence between the association and a vendor. Usually it's like thousands of pages. And so a really good skill to know is that A, they have a right to this information. B, you can charge them $10 or you can charge them 15 cents per page when they make, a request and they want a copy. We only have 10 business days to get them the request. And so when they ask for the documents, it's only 10 business days. If it's a big ask, like a lot of documents, we write back right away and say, I'm sorry, we cannot get this to you in 10 business days. And then we give them, the appropriate time that it'll take us to give them the records. And really, to be safe, try to get it to them, try to get it in 2 days, and communicate with them that it's going to take us longer than the 10 business days. So there's a good paper trail that you got their request, you're working on it, and when the ETA is for you to get it to them. If it's one of those requests that's like enormous and it's going to take a lot of time and resources for the board, the management company, or your attorney, like I said, pick up the phone and talk to them. Ask them what it is they want. You might be able to take a 10,000 page request for records and narrow it down to 5 pages. Having good communication, finding out what they're upset about, and helping them find the answer that they want is really a good strategy. Okay, another thing that's really important as a board member is being a good communicator. So, you're going to have your regular board meetings monthly or quarterly, however you have them. You're going to have an annual meeting. You're required under Arizona law to have an annual meeting every year. But in between those times, the board meetings and the annual meeting, sending out information to your homeowners, sending out blast emails, letting them know that, hey, the front gate is going to be closed and here's why, or, we're not overseeding this year and here's why. Or the pool pump is broken and the pool is going to be broken for 3 days, but we've got, a request in and it's going to be fixed, before the holiday weekend. Or, we're having a team building community event where we're going to have a pumpkin patch for Halloween, or a holiday lights decorating contest, and best prizes are going to go to the properties that have the most beautiful decorations for the holidays, etc. Just building community, communicating to your owners about things that are going on in the association. I always say that the communities that have boards that communicate the best have the fewest problems, and that is 100% true. The boards that are hiding things, doing things behind closed doors, not being communicative to their owners, let me tell you, they have the most problems. The boards that are great communicators and that are constantly putting information on their websites or on their Facebook page, if they have one, and blasting out emails about different things that are happening in the community, owners are informed and they're less likely to be upset and questioning the actions of the board. So just remember that, one of your roles and responsibilities of serving on the board is also being a good communicator to your owners. Let's see. Remember also another law that is important for you to be aware of is that every year you have to have an audit, review, or compilation done of your association's financial records. And what that means is that it's in the Condominium Act and the Planned Communities Act. If your bylaws for your association require the audit to be done by a CPA, it must be done by a CPA. Most association documents do not have that requirement, but some do. And if your documents do not require that, then really the audit, review, or compilation can be done by a committee, by the treasurer, by a third party that you hire, like a bookkeeper, to look into the finances of the association, but it has to be done every year. And so most associations are operating as a December 31st fiscal year end. You have to have that audit, review, or compilation done by June 30th. And then the owners have a right to see it if they make a records request. So just be aware that that review of the financial records needs to take place every fiscal year. And it's a check and balance that our legislature has put into place. Again, it's not a check and balance with teeth because it doesn't universally require an audit to be done by a CPA unless your bylaws require that. But it's a step in the right direction to make sure that somebody's checking to make sure that the finances are in order for your association. Let's see, we already talked a little bit about insurance, but I'm just going to mention briefly again. Remember that your association needs to carry proper insurance. It's going to be listed in your Ccnrs, the type of insurance that you're required to have, and typically the amounts. The most common insurance that most associations have would be like a general liability policy. You're also going to have, like if you're a condominium, either a bare walls or all-inclusive policy. For your buildings, directors and officers insurance for the directors and officers who are serving on the board in case they make a mistake or in case they're sued. In their capacity as being a board member, having insurance is very, very important. Non-negotiable, frankly, if you're serving on your board, you should have that insurance. Having a fidelity bond in case there's any fraud or embezzlement that occurs by a board member, management company, somebody who has access to your association's funds. These are all really important insurances that your association needs to have. So again, general liability, if you're a condominium, all-inclusive policy for your buildings or bare walls, directors and officers insurance, the fidelity bond, like I talked about, and then maybe if you have employees, having insurance to cover your workers' compensation insurance to cover your direct employees in case they're injured while working on the job. Kind of one of the last few points we're going to be talking about would be under Arizona law. You are required to file an annual report every year with the Corporation Commission if you are a nonprofit corporation. It's just kind of like a box checker thing that you have to do, but it's really important because if you lose your corporate status, most associations in Arizona, 99.99999% of them are set up as a nonprofit corporation. If you lose your corporate status, what does that mean? It means a big deal. It's a really big deal. It means that every owner in the association can be personally liable for the debts of the association. And I mean, I know you have insurance, but sometimes there are insurance claims that, or accidents that, the insurance isn't enough to cover it. And in that case, any owner would be responsible and personally liable to pay that debt if you're not incorporated. So it's a really easy form. Every year you just have to file it. Every association has a different due date. A little piece of homework I'm going to give you would be to go to the Arizona Corporation Commission website and click on your association's name, look up under corporation search and check the corporate status, make sure you're in good standing. And they have a little box you can click so that the board can receive an email reminder every year when your annual report is due. And that's just literally the box checker report that you do. You just update who's on the board every year and their addresses and answer some questions. And then you file it, pay the filing fee, which is de minimis. I think it's $15, $25. something like that. And that's how you keep your corporate status. I mean, it's such an easy thing to do and such an important thing to do. This needs to be on your radar. Another thing I want to just make sure you know about are taxes. It's like, taxes are something we always got to be thinking about, right? In our personal life and then also in our business life. Your association has to file taxes every year. The due date is March 15th. And those are your federal and state taxes. It's a de minimis amount that you're going to owe because you're a nonprofit corporation, but you have to file taxes. If you haven't done it and you're just looking at each other right now thinking, uh-oh, we've never done that, talk to your CPA about a strategy. Typically what happens is you just start filing going forward. You also have to pay property taxes if you're a planned community on your common areas. You want to make sure that you're not overpaying. There's a special law on property taxes that allows you to consolidate and value in common areas at a very low rate at $500. It would be the total value of the property. That would be the common areas. And so you just want to just keep on your radar. Okay, we have to pay taxes to state and federal government and property taxes and make sure that those are being paid every year. Last but not least, two more things, actually three more things, and then we're going to move on to, another little area as part of this seminar today. Remember, you have to have your annual meeting. I talked about that very briefly. It's a requirement. Every fiscal year, Arizona law requires you to have an annual meeting. There's a lot of preparation that goes into having your annual meeting. So if your annual meeting is in November, you need to be planning it right now. Right? You need to send out a request for candidates. You need to think about your notice of annual meeting. You need to think about your ballot to elect directors. You need to reserve the location that you're going to have it, or if you're having it on Zoom, you need to set up the Zoom. These are all things that you have to prepare for, and it can't be done, like a week before or 2 weeks before the annual meeting. And then remember, when you have your annual meeting, make sure that you're conducting yourself in a professional and business-like manner, and that you are giving the homeowners an overview of, okay, here's what's going on at the association. Here's some of our successes this year. Here's some of our challenges. Here's our financial status. Here's our plan for the future and what we plan to do next year and 5-year plan, whatever. Last but not least, just kind of the final parting point, we kind of talked a little bit about the importance of having a relationship with vendors, important vendors. This goes hand in hand with that. Hiring advisors to help you through problems that your association may face. So having a dream team of trusted advisors is so important for associations. Your legal counsel, your management company, your insurance agent, your reserve specialist, your landscaping company. These are all important parts of making your association successful. So having a good relationship with them, reaching out to them, checking in with them when there's a problem, contacting them early, doing preventative work so that the problem doesn't, explode into World War III. Getting advice early from your trusted advisors is such a good strategy so that you have less hassles when you're serving on your board. And so I hope these are some good tips, just kind of a quick recap. When you're serving on your board of what we talked about, you got to participate, right? You've got to be in compliance with your governing documents and state and federal laws. If you're not really sure what your requirements are, do that 15-minute spin through your association's documents. Attend classes like this through the city of Scottsdale, where we're here to provide you free education about your responsibilities under state, federal law, case law, and have an opportunity to ask a question for free to help you through that. Don't forget about your fiduciary duty to the association. You have to act with care. You have to keep things confidential, and you can't profit from serving on the board. Don't forget that you have to have, regular board meetings and annual meetings, and you have to have special requirements for notices for those meetings. Don't forget that you have a responsibility to collect assessments and to handle violations. You may want to think about a policy to do that. Remember that we have a whole wealth of information for free on our website to help board members, owners, and managers at mulcahylawfirm.com. Our cheat sheets are just a one-page summary of important topics, and we have cheat sheets on almost all of the topics that we've touched on today. How to run an annual meeting, how to prepare a budget, we have blog on how to handle inflation for associations. We have cheat sheets on records requests by owners and blogs on records requests by owners. We have cheat sheets on how to have an annual meeting, how to comply with the Arizona open meeting law. All of this information is free and at your fingertips. So we really encourage you to attend these classes and to consider taking a look at our website, which has a lot of that free information on our cheat sheets and our videos. Since the pandemic started, we've had at least 50, 60 classes. We've had over 50,000 views of our videos, and all of those videos are on our website and right at your fingertips if you'd rather watch a video than look at a cheat sheet. So we encourage you to do that. Okay, let's talk a little bit about where does the new board member begin? So we've kind of covered a lot of ground here today, right? So maybe you're a new board member, or maybe you're a homeowner thinking about running for the board, or maybe you're a seasoned board member, but this presentation today has kind of freaked you out and you're worried about, oh my gosh, there's so much I need to know. So where do I begin? How can I start the process to make sure that I'm serving as a good board member? So like I said during the presentation, just get back to the basics. I'm a Vince Lombardi girl from Wisconsin, Green Bay Packer fan. Vince Lombardi's main point was always, let's get back to the basics. Bring the team back to the basics and you will build to have a successful team. So what is back to the basics? Read the association documents and the minutes for the past year if you weren't on the board, and get up to speed on what are the issues that face the association, right? We have a really great cheat sheet called the Eisenhower Method, and it deals with how to come up with a plan for challenges facing your association. You may want to take a look at that if you have a lot of problems at your association. And it helps you to determine urgency and importance issues, determine which issues are urgent and which ones are important. And then we, in the cheat sheet, we teach you how to prioritize which projects you should be spending your time on so that you can make maximum impact and handle the problems that really need to be addressed. Because one of the biggest complaints that I hear about serving on the board is that we spend so much time dealing with homeowner complaints and violations that we never get the big things done, like redesigning creating a web page for our association, or doing things at the pool, such as redoing the pool decking, or replastering the pool, or repaving the roads. These are all things that are maintenance things that are really important, and we don't spend any time on that. Instead, we spend 45 minutes in a meeting hearing about somebody who's upset about the neighbor's dog that's barking, right? And so it just gives you a means to prioritize your time as a board member and delegate things like maybe the dog barking thing to the manager, and having the board really focus on the things that are going to have the most impact for your association. So if you're new to the board or you're struggling, here that are some suggestions. So go back, look at your association documents, look at the minutes, come up with a plan for how you want this year or the rest of this year to run, and use that Eisenhower Method plan to help you prioritize what's urgent and important. Some other thing is, know where you can find information when questions come up. So let's say that somebody makes a records request and you don't know, an owner makes a records request, you don't know that you're required to get the records. This is where you want to be attending these classes and go to our webpage and go into the search engine and type in records request, and the answer will be right there what your responsibilities are. Also, just know that Arizona law has all of the Arizona revised statutes at your fingertips online. So if you find something, you hear about something in this class, or you are looking at our webpage, you can always go and actually Google the particular law and read the specifics of the law online. Learn. I guess that's probably a really good closing point before we get into, the final subject we're going to talk about here today. You have to be continual learners if you're, serving on your board. So reaching out to professionals to ask for advice, your trusted advisors, attend these free trainings, maybe consider having your board do a one-on-one training. If you're having a lot of dysfunction on your board, you can't get along, or you just have a problem with a number of homeowners and you just can't find a way to find a solution, maybe have somebody come in and do a boot camp. Our firm does boot camps for boards that have a high level of dysfunction or boards that just want more information. And we come in, we spend an hour, we pre-think the problem before we get in there into the meeting, and we just go to work. We spend an hour finding a solution to make the problem better. And these are all some great suggestions if your association's having trouble. I'm guessing the people that are here on this call here today, most of you don't have problems because you're reaching out and taking advantage of the free education. But it's just good to know if things change and you need help. There are lots of resources to the city of Scottsdale and through your trusted advisors to help you. Just kind of in conclusion, a couple things. If you are interested, our firm has a code of conduct. That's a cheat sheet that you can find on our website that talks about the expectations of board members. It's a good little refresher that you might want to consider adopting for your community. I usually don't whip out the code of conduct cheat sheet unless there's like a high level of dysfunction, like the board's not getting along internally, or you can't get anything done, or people are violating their fiduciary duties, like the duty of care, duty of confidentiality is a big one that we see. I whip out the code of conduct, just reminding them that you need to keep things confidential. And some associations ask the board to sign it, saying that they will agree to abide by the terms of the code of conduct. You can't make them, but it's something that you can request that might make people think twice before they violate the code of conduct going forward. Okay, so we covered a lot of grounds today, and we're going to go into the questions here in a minute, but just a quick reminder, don't forget that those new 5 laws are going to be going into effect and will become the law on September 24th. And so you just need to make sure that your boards are aware of the laws and that we're in compliance with those going forward. We have a great cheat sheet on board member roles and responsibilities, which you can find on our website, which kind of is a deep dive on everything we talked about here today. I just wish you the best of luck as you're serving on your board. It's not an easy job. I know firsthand. I think I've been on the board now 14 or 15 years, not all at once, but some years are longer than others. So just know that if you're a board member here, I know a majority of you that are here today are board members, know it's a tough job, know it's a rewarding job, and you're making a difference for your community. And, we really appreciate your service. I want to make sure I say that to you today. If you're a homeowner that's listening in on this call, guess what? You're probably going to be a board member in the future. And we appreciate you wanting to learn more so you can make your community better. And lastly, if you're a manager, I know what a difficult job you have because you're balancing a lot of, plates in the air. And it's great that you're here today to try to be better and to improve your skill set so that you can better serve the communities that you work with. Okay, we're going to go right into questions. Looks like we have a number of great questions here today. Question: we have a couple of residents that request all board meetings be on Zoom, even though we resumed to in-person meetings well over a year ago. Our board meets outside under the covered common area. Meetings are announced and open to all residents. Although we work to accommodate as much as possible, logistics are sometimes not favorable to have a Zoom meeting. Must the board comply with all board meetings being by Zoom? Okay, we have a great blog topic on this topic that talks about can our board continue virtual meetings after the pandemic, which we're going to share with you. Here's my thoughts on your question. So most of the boards that we work with have continued using Zoom. Some have gone back in person, some have opted, I would say probably a majority, probably 60, 70, 80% of the boards are now doing all their meetings on Zoom. But it's up to you. There's no requirement under the law that says you have to have it in person, you have to have it, you can't have telephonic, you have to have it Zoom. it's going to be, the pandemic kind of was a game changer. And so you have to decide what works best for your board. If a majority of your board wants to meet in person and your community wants to continue doing that, go ahead, do that, no problem. I think what happened in the pandemic is that people that maybe in the past hadn't attended board meetings or had not attended board meetings wanted to do it during the pandemic, and Zoom gave them an opportunity to do that. So, they want to be informed. And I think as board members, we should, encourage that. We want our homeowners to come so they know what's going on in the community. And so we can recruit future board members, right? So it's not a life sentence serving on the board. So in your situation, here's what I would recommend. I get it that Zoom may not work because you're doing it outside, in a covered common area, but your cell phone works. And what I would recommend is, having, set up a conference call line where you can be at the board meeting and have a cell phone there and put it on speakerphone, and anybody who wants to call into the conference line can listen to the board meeting. It may not be by Zoom where they can actually see, but they could at least listen. And Zoom has a capability to do that. That's free, if it's under 40 minutes, I think it is. You can also set up a free conference line online and just share the information with your owners if they want to appear by telephone. But if you have people that are wanting to come to your meetings by Zoom, or if they're okay with coming by telephone, as long as both parties can hear each other, why not accommodate that? That's a good idea. Now, are you required to accommodate that? No, you're not. But it's a good idea if you want to be a good board member and you want to have the fewest amount of hassles while you're serving on your board, to accommodate a request like that. Okay, let's talk about the next question. Question number 3. Do you recommend every board member have their own D&O liability insurance policy? And if so, can you give us a reason that we share with our board? Okay, so we have a great cheat sheet on insurance on our website, and we're going to be sharing it with you here too. It's just basically a 411 on everything you need to know about insurance. So I want to make sure that we're clear on the D&O policy, the directors and officers policy. The association pays for a D&O policy, and that D&O policy, it's just one policy, and that covers all board members who are serving on the board. And so individual board members don't need to get their own individual D&O policy. That is not necessary. The board procures that insurance, they pay for it, and it covers all of the current board members. If you, as a board member, say, hey, I want to get additional insurance, you're going to have to pay for that out of pocket yourself. It's probably not necessary. Some board members I know, they get like an umbrella policy on their, home. It's not necessary, but it's an option, and you want to make sure that you talk to your personal insurance agent if you're wanting to do something like that. But again, it's not advisable or necessary. It's not something you have to do or should do, really. Okay, question number 4. In the Ccnrs, to avoid short-term rentals, should the Ccnrs specifically read no short-term rentals? We have a great cheat sheet on this topic too. It's called Amending Ccnrs and Implementing Short-Term Rental Restrictions. So I think if you're going to amend your Ccnrs, to avoid, I think that means prohibit short-term rentals, you have to be really specific in terms of what is a short-term rental. What type of rentals are allowed? Like, are you going to allow rentals that are over 60 days? And you really need to work with your legal counsel as you're structuring these CCNR amendments or interpreting what your current CCNR amendments state. Condominiums have some very special requirements if you're trying to prohibit short-term rentals or place restrictions or limitations on it. So you want to talk with your attorney for your association if you're a condo thinking about doing that. Planned communities, it's a little bit easier to do that under the Planned Communities Act. Okay, next question. My fellow board members prefer to vote and handle matters via email. To me, it feels confusing and inefficient. What is the best practice around this? Advice? Well, I know, go to our website and go to our blog and type in email, decisions by boards. And you'll see a whole bunch of articles on that. We write about this often. Board members should be making decisions via email outside of a board meeting, period. Okay, that is against the open meeting law. Arizona has a special open meeting law that says that anytime a quorum of the board is discussing association business, it needs to be an open board meeting and 48 hours notice needs to be given. The only exception to this would be if there is an emergency and you need to make a decision immediately and you cannot wait to notice a board meeting and conduct a board meeting. Then there is an exception where you can have an emergency board meeting, and I extend that to email, where you make a quick decision. You keep the copy of the emails where you made the decisions and then read them into the record at the next regularly scheduled board meeting to talk about the emergency, what you did take action on it, and then to attach to the minutes the emails approving the emergency action. But other than that, no emails, please. You're violating the law. You can use email to here's the board packet for the meeting, or here's 3 bids. We're going to discuss it at the next board meeting, or the manager can send an email to the board saying a tree fell, at the pool and we had to hire somebody to come in and remove it. But once you start having a quorum of the board discussing association business and voting on things that are non-emergencies, you're really getting into dangerous territory of violating the open meeting law. Okay, next question, number 7. Our association had a reserve study in 2016, but it was incomplete, meaning the largest categories of replacement costs, electrical and irrigation, were not included. Our current board would not approve the new reserve study. They stated it is not necessary. For safety reasons, I'm greatly concerned with us having an appropriate short and long-term financial plan to upkeep our aging property. My question is, how do we convince the board that we need a new and complete reserve study? Well, I think we've got a great cheat sheet on reserve studies on our webpage, mulcahylawfirm.com. I would encourage you to look at that. Having a reserve study that's accurate is such an important tool for all associations. So I really would recommend that. It's been 7 years since your last reserve study. I would really recommend that you consider as a board updating the reserve study that you had in 2016. It's probably not going to be that much money. It's going to be, they're going to have to include the areas that they left off, but usually an update is less expensive. Ultimately, you just need a majority of the board to approve it. So try to get them to read my cheat sheet. Get a copy of the recording of this video and let them read let them watch the video of what I'm saying right now about the importance of a cheat sheet, the importance of a reserve study, and having a correct reserve study and the board following it. And hopefully a majority of the board will see the light and see that it's really an important thing to do, and you should plan to do that. Next question, what if board members structure actions without the knowledge of other 2 members in order to pass their agenda? Well, that's not good, but it happens. I'm not going to lie to you. So boards are, it's a living, breathing existence, right? And let's say you have 5 board members, 3 board members, are a majority. And sometimes board members will individually talk to other board members and try to get a consensus for whatever agenda that they may have. That's not a violation of the law as long as a quorum of the board isn't meeting all at once to discuss these topics. My best advice to you is sometimes you're in the minority on the board. I know the first couple of years that I got back on my board, I was way in the minority. I was one of the only people that was, trying to get us on a fiscally sound agenda. And so what I would recommend is that you continue to document your concerns. And if you're not in favor of their agenda, make statements at the board meetings, why you disagree, and then try to get like-minded people to run for the board so that, you can get a majority to see things the way that you want them to be seen. Or maybe, try to get an independent person that comes in that will independently look at things and make decisions. So not much you can do if they're not violating the open meeting law on that. Question number 9, can an HOA president act as treasurer when no interested owner or board member agrees to take that position? So short answer, yes, as long as the bylaws don't prohibit it. It is a big job being the president and the treasurer, very big job. Both of those officer positions standing alone are a lot. So it's a lot for one person to take on, but if we have nobody to do it, then that may be your only option if the bylaws don't prohibit it. Usually secretary and treasurer or vice president and treasurer are good crossovers if you're going to have one person holding 2 officer titles. Are there any restrictions associated with political signs or propositions? There's been laws on the books for many years regarding political signs or propositions in HOAs and condominiums, that we can't prohibit the use of political signs. And that would be before, it's a certain number of days before the primary and then a certain number of days after the election. I'd have to have the law right in front of me. I think it might be like 45 days before, 15 days after the signs have to be up. And we're in that window right now because the primaries have already occurred and the general election in November hasn't happened yet. So we do have information on that. We've got a blog on that on our website if you want to do a deep dive and hammer down those exact days before the election. Again, you can find that at mulcahylawfirm.com. Okay, let's look at we have just a few more questions here. So any best known method of handling chronic non-paying owners and owners who have filed or been granted bankruptcy? Which areas of non-payment entitle the association to pursue foreclosure? Okay, so this is like a bar exam question. There's quite a lot of issues raised here. Okay, so best known method of handling chronic non-paying owners. Go to our cheat sheet on secrets for collecting delinquent assessments. We have a really good platform and plan to collect assessments. The key thing on that is jump on it early. Get it to the attorney early. Lien the property early for non-payment of assessments. Have the attorney evaluate what is the best legal action to take against this owner to get the money. If you let it sit for years and years and years, this chronic non-paying owner is going to continue being a chronic non-paying owner. If you jump on it early and you're aggressive and you follow, an enforcement plan for collecting delinquent assessments, the owner is going to know there's consequences. There's going to be late fees. There's going to be lien fees. There's going to be attorney's fees. And we're ultimately going to either pursue a personal judgment or foreclosure against an owner. They're going to pay. We're going to be in that pile of bills I have to pay or there's serious consequences. That's what you want to do. We also have a great cheat sheet on bankruptcy. We have limited rights when an owner files bankruptcy, but our firm has a cheat sheet that outlines everything that we can do. And we encourage you to look at that. That's on our website at mulcahylawfirm.com. We can only foreclose if an owner is delinquent in the payment of assessments for 1 year, or they owe $1,200 in assessments only. That's our benchmark for us to be able to foreclose. We can only foreclose in amounts regarding to unpaid assessments, late fees, collection costs, and attorney's fees incurred, all regarding that unpaid assessment debt. So hope that's helpful. Go to our cheat sheet. We've got some great information on that. Secrets of collecting delinquent assessments. Question number 14, if a homeowner owns more than 1 unit, how many votes are they allowed in a board meeting? Check your Ccnrs. Typically, they have a vote for each unit, or they get a ballot for each unit or lot that they own. So you want to check your Ccnrs to make sure that's accurate, but that is the way it works in 99% of associations. Question number 15, we're down to our last 3 questions. Bruce, I am right on target. I've got 6 minutes left and I know I can do it. Okay, if a resolution is passed by the board on responsibilities for water leaks and insurance, is it an enforceable document or must it be in the Ccnrs? It really does need to be in the Ccnrs for it to be enforceable. Next question, number 16, how can a board handle a condo owner that continually causes disruptions in the neighborhood and makes neighbors feel unsafe? This owner is confrontational. Police have been called. Owner's been fined. Most fines are not paid. we have a great cheat sheet on this called How to Deal with Difficult Owners. It sounds like this is escalated to the point where this needs to go to your association's attorney to send a letter to the owner outlining the behavior, threatening legal action if the behavior continues, and continuing to fine the owner. If the owner is dangerous, we really do encourage you to contact 911 if there's a dangerous event where people are feeling unsafe. Also, owners or individual board members can get an injunction prohibiting harassment against the owner, so the owner has to stay 50 feet or 100 feet away from them. All of that's outlined, the procedure, on our cheat sheet dealing with difficult owners on our website at mulcahylawfirm.com. Okay, last question. I live in a large community that has 2 HOA boards that are both incorporated and share some joint responsibilities in our community. The first board, I am the president, and my vice president is also a board member in the HOA master board. If this person became president in the master board, what, if any, should be a concern for my current board? Really good question. You're talking about kind of the intricacies between having, you live in a large master plan community. There's a large master plan community board, and then you have your sub association board. And so right now, sounds like 2 board members are here in this discussion. We've got one board member is the president of the sub association. Another board member is the vice president of the master association, but she's also a member of the sub association board. You know, you're kind of worried about, hey, sometimes we have competing interests, right? So what I would recommend is that your board reach out to your legal counsel and talk about this a little more. Anytime that there might be an issue where there's a conflict of interest between this board member who's on your board, you know, if there's a conflict of interest between the master board and your sub board, your board member that's on the master board may need to recuse himself from discussing that issue with your small sub association board. There aren't that many times that this comes up, but if the master and the sub, are warring and fighting about things, it could definitely come up. So you want to get your legal counsel involved and come up with some parameters so that we don't have conflicts of interest and we don't put that master association vice president or future president of the master association in a situation where they might be, you know, disclosing confidential information, you know, having conflicting interests that he's representing both sides of it. So we want to make sure we talk all of that through before any issues arise. Great question. Okay, conclusion. I've got 2 minutes, Bruce. I'm on target. First class, we are on target for this class. So thank you, first of all, to the City of Scottsdale for having me today as a presenter for this class. It's always a pleasure to work with Bruce and his team at Neighborhood Services and the City of Scottsdale to provide education to board members, homeowners, and managers about how we all can follow the law better, work together as associations, and have better communities in Scottsdale. Thanks again for being with us here today. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thanks again to Bruce and his team at the City of Scottsdale for putting on these awesome classes.